Alright, what's going on guys? Today we're going to be upgrading the Deadly Discovery Challenger deck, and we'll be doing it on a $30 budget in US dollars. And if the currency isn't relevant to your area, that's fine. It's the same price that the deck sells for, so that should give you an idea of how much we are spending. So Deadly Discovery is WotC's take on the Golgari Midrange deck, and for the most part we have all the pieces that we need. For the most part. Almost. We have the Explore package, you know, with Wild Growth Walker and various Explore creatures. The only thing missing here is we only have 2 out of 4 Jadeite Rangers, so we'll be fixing that, but we have that package. We also have all the removal we could want, and we have plenty of ways to generate card advantage and outvalue our opponent, so we have almost everything that we need, except one thing. And what is that? Well, it's simple, it's the top end. These decks always play a few large threats at the top end of the curve, things like Doom Whisperer, Carnage Tyrant, Vraska, and Vivian Reed. Most decks play about 3 to 5 copies of these cards, and every deck plays a different variety, so you can totally take your pick. I mean, you'll look at one deck and it'll have 3 Doom Whisperers and a Carnage Tyrant, and then the next deck will have 3 Vraskas and a Vivian Reed, and then another deck might just have a full playset of Carnage Tyrants and that's it. Basically, any combination of these cards, pretty much every deck plays, you know, again, about 3 to 5 copies of just something at the top end to kind of take control of the game, and everyone has a different opinion about what is the right answer. Some people prefer one card over another, you know, whatever. Now for us, I'm going to be focusing on Doom Whisperers because they are the more budget friendly card. Compared to Vivian and Carnage Tyrant, for example, those are much more expensive and we can't afford to buy 2 or 3 of those with our budget. But honestly, if you want to play Carnage Tyrant, then go for it. If you want to play Vivian, then go for it. This package is literally up to you, and if you look at deck lists, you will find that everyone who plays this deck has their own personal preference. So yeah, anyway, let's get started with our upgrade. First off, we're going to take out a District Guide for a Jadeite Ranger. District Guide is okay, and some decks do play 1 or 2 copies, but it's not completely necessary, and having a full playset of Jadeite Rangers is pretty standard for the deck, so we will definitely go with that. Next, we'll take out a Platecrafter for our 4th Jadeite Ranger. A lot of decks aren't running the Platecrafter. It's alright, and you will see it in the sideboard from time to time, but it's not very common and it's definitely not necessary. It's actually kind of dangerous to play because if you get matched up against mono white, they have so many creatures that just pop out a token when they die that it kind of neutralizes this card. So yeah, that's why some people are opting out of Platecrafter, and that's why we're opting out of it as well for a 4th Jadeite Ranger. Next, we're going to take out 1 of the Eldest Reborn and 1 Golgari Findbroker for 2 Doom Whisperers. And again, if you want to play any of the other top end threats here, you totally can. Anyway, the Eldest Reborn is great, but I think 3 copies is a little bit high, and most competitive players seem to feel the same way because you almost never see decks running that many copies. Most will run 1 or 2, assuming they run any at all. And then Golgari Findbroker is another card that it's great, but it's not usually played in high quantities. Most decks only run 1 or 2, so yeah, just trimming down a couple of these, 1 of each, bringing them down to 2 copies each in the main board for our 2 top end threats is totally fine with me. And that's actually all of our upgrades because the deck does come with a Vraska Relic Seeker, so yeah, there we go. Top end complete. We have our 4 Jadeite Rangers, we have our top end. That's basically all the deck needs. It really is. It's kind of crazy. It just needed a couple Carnage Tyrants, a couple Doom Whisperers. You know, that's all it needed. That's all it really needed. Now, with all that money you saved, you could spend a little bit of money on the mana base, but we'll get to that in a second. First, let's look at the sideboard. The deck comes with a couple of murders, and I don't think these are necessary. So I want to cut them out for 2 copies of Moment's Craving. This might seem weird because the cravings seem worse, but here's the thing. We have a ton of removal in the main board, so having this in the side seems kind of irrelevant. Moment's Craving, however, is really really good against the aggro decks. Not only does it kill a creature, but it gains us some life, so it helps us kind of push the game a little bit later. Plus, it can kill things like Adonto Vanguard, which are hard to kill, and it definitely doesn't work with murder. Plus, like, it's really nice to kill a Pyromancer. Like, they play it, they deal 2 damage, then they go to attack with it, we kill the Pyromancer, and then we gain our 2 life back. That's the kind of thing that this deck needs to do for the first few turns to push it into the later turns, at which point this deck will start taking over just because its threats are bigger and it's good at just grinding the opponent out if the game goes long. So yeah, we just need to stave off those early threats, and Moment's Craving is perfect for the aggro decks. You definitely want to bring it in against mono white, you definitely want to bring it in against mono red, and just push the game later so your bigger stuff can start coming out and taking over the game. Another thing I want to address is the 3 golden demises. Now, these are much like the top end threats we talked about earlier, in that no one is in agreement about which board sweeper you should play. Golden Demise is one, but there is also Cry of the Carnarium and Ritual of Soot. Now, the benefit of Cry of Carnarium is that it can kill Adonto Vanguard, which Ritual of Soot can't, and it also exiles the creatures, so things like Tithe Taker, Hunted Witness, and Martyr of Dusk won't be able to create their tokens that they leave behind after the sweeper. It's really annoying to just wipe the board, but then your opponent has 2 or 3 1/1 tokens that their creatures created. It's obnoxious. Cry of Carnarium fixes that. However, on the flip side, it doesn't hit things like Snubhorn Sentry and Banalish Marshal in white, and things like Goblin Chain Whirler and Runaway Steamkin in red, assuming the Steamkin has some +1/+1 counters, so it's not guaranteed to hit everything. Ritual of Soot, on the other hand, will hit all of these things, which is great, but because it destroys, it won't be able to kill Adonto Vanguard, and it will leave behind a lot of tokens against the white deck. So basically, there is no perfectly correct answer. The Golden Demise is more one-sided, because it can be a one-sided board sweeper. The Cry of the Carnarium exiles creatures, which can be very useful, and the Ritual has a bit more reach, and it can destroy some of the more top-end threats in the aggro decks like Banalish Marshal and Goblin Chain Whirler and whatnot. So yeah, there's no exactly perfect answer. So you can basically play any number of these in these 3 slots. We have 3 slots for board sweepers, we have 3 golden demises. You can just keep them as golden demise if you want. You can replace them with either of the 2 other board sweepers, or you can play some combination. I've seen people play like 2 Cry of the Carnarium and 1 Ritual of Soot. You know, whatever you want. So long as it's one of these 3 board sweepers and any of these 3 slots, you're fine, and it's really just a matter of preference. Now, moving on to the mana base, if you want to spend more of that $30 budget on lands, what you want are woodland cemeteries and overgrown tombs. You'll need 2 cemeteries and 3 tombs, since the deck does come with a few of these, and this will be a huge help when it comes to color screw. You know, it's super helpful, though dual lands are a little bit expensive. Regardless, if you do have 1 or 2 of these, or if you do buy all of them, whatever, just replace basic lands in equal quantities and you'll be fine. You know, if you have 2 of them, take a forest and a swamp out. If you have 4 of them, take 2 forests, take 2 swamps, you know, so on and so forth. Pretty simple. Take basics out, put these dual lands in, your mana base will be better for it. But that's, you know, kind of an optional thing. So going forward with the deck, you know, Golgari Midrange is great, but the most popular version of this deck right now is actually Sultai Midrange, which splashes blue. This is very, very expensive, as you need about $150 in lands alone. Yeah, that's a lot just for a mana base. If you do want to take this deck that far though, it gives you access to Hydroid Crassus and Hostage Taker. These are also very pricey. In fact, Hydroid Crassus is sitting at like $20 each, so you have to spend $150 or so on the mana base just so you can spend $80 or so on the Hydroid Crassus. Hostage Taker also a little bit expensive. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. In fact, the Sultai Midrange deck, I think it's currently clocking in at about $430, so yeah, it's an expensive deck. But fortunately, it is definitely not necessary to go that far. This deck is perfectly fine out of the box, it's just missing a few little things, and with our upgrades, I think we have rounded the deck out. We finished it basically. We have those few little pieces that were missing, and what we have now is actually pretty decent. I thought this deck was going to be really expensive to update, but fortunately, those Jade Light Rangers have crashed in price. They were like $15 a few weeks ago, and they're down to like $2 to $4 now, so that's nice. And Doom Whisperers as, a perfectly acceptable top-end. I mean, again, that's not a budget option. Tier 1 decks are literally playing Doom Whisper. It's not like we're not sacrificing anything. So it's a perfectly fine top-end choice that just so happens to be very budget friendly. And overall, we have a pretty solid deck, in my opinion. So anyway, if you want to tune your deck further, I would highly recommend you check out the description of this video, which you can find just below, as I am going to post links to a variety of competitive Golgari Midrange decks down there. You'll see that they are all fundamentally the same, but vary wildly when it comes to those top end threats. I'll also leave a link to a Sultai Midrange deck if you want to see what that deck looks like, but again, no reason to go crazy. You don't need to go that far for a local gaming store's FNM. I will also leave links to the upgrade videos for the other 3 challenger decks if you're interested in those. But regardless, this deck is much more well-rounded than when we started, and I hope you get to smash face with those Doom Whisperers from time to time. Have at it, sounds fun. Alright, that's it for me. Thanks for watching everyone. I hope this video was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.